The morning in Oakhaven Village began long before sunlight touched the treetops, marked by the rhythmic sound of Mab grinding grain. For this peasant, food represented biological necessity rather than pleasure, sustaining 12 hours of field labor. She managed grain subsistence, transforming barley and rye into the dark, dense bread that formed the basis of her existence. Mab's breakfast consisted of one slice of this rustic, often hardened bread, dipped in a mug of weak ale. She managed safe hydration, as small beer was boiled and free from pathogens infesting local wells. To her, alcohol served as a vital source of liquid calories and quick energy needed to face the first plowing of cold, damp earth. Meanwhile, at the fortified manor, Lord Geoffrey awoke to the aroma of fine white wheat bread, known as manchet. He managed wheat status, consuming only the most expensive processed grains, which were forbidden by law and cost for the lower class. He viewed food as a clear social distinction, a physical barrier between noble blood and worker flesh. Mab managed the eternal cauldron, an iron pot that never left the fire above the central hearth of her wattle and daub cottage. Inside, she prepared pottage, a thick stew of oats, broad beans, and peas. This mixture evolved daily. She added whatever was available, a withered onion, leeks, or herbs gathered at the forest edge. The peasant diet in 1348 was almost entirely vegetarian due to economic imposition. Mab managed earth protein, depending on legumes to maintain the strength in her arms. Meat was an absolute rarity, reserved for religious festivals or when a farm animal grew too old to work. She viewed animal fat as a sacred, distant luxury. Geoffrey, on the other hand, managed hunting opulence, consuming deer, wild boar, and herons at banquets, accompanied by wines imported from Gascony. He used expensive spices like pepper, cinnamon, and saffron to demonstrate his connection to global trade routes. To him, flavor was secondary to the demonstration of power a meat-laden table represented. Mab managed the survival garden, where she grew cabbages, turnips, and parsnips. These root vegetables were the silent heroes of her diet, providing essential vitamins during winter months. She knew the health of her family depended on the depth of those roots and the resistance of leaves to frost. She was a master of practical botany and home economics. Milk logic was also fundamental. Mab managed the white gold from her single cow, transforming milk into hard cheeses and salted butter. However, most of these products were sold to pay taxes to Geoffrey. She kept the whey, a thin byproduct used to enrich the children's pottage. Nutrition was a calculation that never balanced. Geoffrey managed luxury consumption, discarding leftovers that could feed the entire village for a week. He viewed waste as a class right, proof that scarcity did not touch him. He and Mab were poles of a violent food system where one's hunger was the other's security. Social hierarchy was written on every plate served in the manor or the hut. If you understand the importance of food in constructing historical hierarchies and the nutritional resilience of medieval peasants, subscribe to follow our documentation of lives sustained by the land and sweat. Afternoon in the field was the moment when the energy reserve from breakfast began to fail. Mab managed afternoon rationing, distributing pieces of hard cheese and wild apples to her children. She knew that green hunger, the period before harvest, was the most dangerous time. If grain stocks ran out in May, the family faced real starvation. Preservation was the key to survival. Mab managed salt science, using every precious gram to cure small pieces of pork fat. She hung food from the ceiling, where hearth smoke helped with conservation. To her, salt was not a seasoning, but a defense technology against decay and death by hunger during the long, harsh winter. Geoffrey managed the fasting calendar imposed by the church, which prohibited meat for almost a third of the year. However, he used his wealth to bypass deprivation, consuming expensive fish like pike and salmon prepared with almonds and dried fruits. He transformed penance into gastronomy, keeping his stomach full while pretending to follow rules of humility. Mab, unable to buy fresh fish, managed sacred deprivation by eating only bread and raw onions during Lent. She viewed fasting not as a spiritual exercise, but as an extension of the scarcity that already defined her life. Faith was the only thing she could consume without limits. though it did not quiet the constant growl of her empty stomach. Sugar was a non-existent concept for Mab. She managed nature's sweetness through honey, if she was lucky enough to keep a hive. Honey was used as medicine and a rare treat. Jeffrey, however, managed Indian sugar, consuming crystallized sweets that caused his teeth to decay, an ironic sign of wealth and social status. Mab managed forest risk, gathering mushrooms and chestnuts under the constant threat of punishment for poaching. Jeffrey's forest laws protected game for noble sport, depriving peasants of vital protein sources. Mab was a thief by necessity, risking lashes to add a bit of texture to her family's thin broth. Preparing supper was the final act of daily management. Mab had to ensure the fire was kept low to avoid burning the hut, but hot enough to cook tough vegetable fibers. She managed the details of primordial cooking. For nobles, food appeared ready. For Mab, it was the result of hours gathering sticks and manual processing. Mab found a moment of peace while eating her last bowl of soup in the dark. She felt the vibration of the earth under her feet, a physical connection to the soil producing her food. She was a vital gear in a cruel biological system that never stopped for her exhaustion. She cleaned the bowl with the last piece of bread. She was the body sustaining the feudal pyramid. Jeffrey closed his afternoon business, satisfied with taxes collected in the form of wheat and barley. Looking at his lands, he saw a calorie production machine for his pleasure. He did not see Mab's cracked hands or the paleness of village children. He was the manager of an abstract reality, where food was just a number on an account parchment. He called Mab to deliver the weekly eggs owed to the manor. They met at the kitchen door, a silent encounter between nutritional predator and prey. Hierarchy was absolute. Jeffrey accepted the eggs without looking at Mab, while she bowed her head, smelling the aroma of roasted meat emanating from the manor. Injustice smelled of fat and rosemary. As night descended over the manor, Jeffrey began his nightly banquet. He managed meat logic, serving peacocks with feathers reattached to impress his guests. Salt, served in solid silver cellars, was used in excess to demonstrate opulence. The environment was heavy with the smell of strong wine and fat melting over the fire. While Jeffrey chewed fine birds, Mab was back in her hut, cleaning what remained of the dirt floor. She managed organic waste, feeding the family pig with turnip skins and vegetable scraps. The pig was her biological savings account. Every pound of fat accumulated by the animal represented her family's security in the future. Jeffrey's dinner was a ritual of dominance. He managed seating hierarchy, where the best cuts of meat went to the most powerful. Guests used slices of old bread, called trenchers, as plates. These breads absorbed meat juices, and at the end of the meal, Jeffrey managed performative charity, ordering them to be given to the poor. Mab waited at the side door of the manor for these soaked trenchers. To her, that fat-drenched bread was the best meal of the week. She managed scrap nutrition, receiving elite crumbs with forced gratitude. She viewed greasy bread as medicine for her children's weakness, ignoring the humiliation inherent in the act. Managing stock integrity was a struggle against rats and fungi. Mab had to keep her grain dry and safe, as any sign of mold could mean ergotism and death. She was the guardian of life, protecting the little she owned against nature and seigneurial greed. She slept near the grain stock, her body serving as the family's last shield. Mab dedicated her last hour of wakefulness to mending hemp sacks. Her feet burned from the miles walked between field and mill. She managed her fatigue with a dark pride. She would not let hunger win today. Jeffrey, in the manor, drank sweet wine and discussed politics, oblivious to the Herculean effort every wheat grain demanded from his people. The manor creaked under the night wind, but Jeffrey's internal world was a golden warmth. Mab paced the small perimeter of her garden, checking that rabbits had not entered. She was the sentinel of a world of scarcity, feeling the weight of responsibility in every bone. She felt the pressure of inequality as a physical weight in her chest. Jeffrey retired to his feather bed, satisfied with his divinely ordered position. Mab helped her husband wash his hands with cold water before lying on the straw mattress. She was the architect of a survival Jeffrey would never understand. As for him, food was a right, while for her it was a daily conquest pulled from the earth with blood. The hut was a sanctuary of smoke and shadows, but Mab had to face tomorrow's reality. She knew the cycle of plowing, planting, and harvesting would restart with light. She was the machine of an ancient time, sustained by thin broths and hard bread. She closed her eyes, listening to the wind in the wall cracks. Hunger was an animal she had learned to tame. Mab slept under a single rough wool blanket, her stomach finally silent. She dreamed of infinite wheat fields and tables where bread was always white. She awoke with the early morning cold, the reality of the 14th century returning with frost on the windows. She was the life force of a system that despised her, waiting for the first sign of sun to restart. The church clock struck the hours, marking the rhythm of feudal life. Mab stared into the darkness, her mind already calculating how much grain remained in the chest. She thought of the health she would never have, and the freedom that was an alien concept. The hut was her fortress and her prison. She accepted the day with a sigh, her spirit as tough as oak wood. The mist in the valley created ghostly silhouettes over the fields. Geoffrey slept, wrapped in silks, dreaming of new taxes and lands. Mab was the only one who knew the truth about the cost of that peace. She was the base of the food pyramid, the silent producer of all the wealth Geoffrey consumed. The world's balance depended entirely on her hands. The morning of harvest began with an electric tension in the air. Mab was the first to move, sharpening her sickle under the pale light. She managed abundance logistics, knowing the work of the coming weeks would determine if they lived or died next year. The sun's heat would be her ally and enemy as she cut the golden stalks. Geoffrey prepared to supervise the collection of the tithe. He managed land accounting, wearing his best leather boots to walk among the fields. He saw wheat not as food, but as capital. He sat on his horse, a figure of unquestionable authority, watching peasant sweat transform into his personal profit. Harvest was a lesson in applied biology. Mab worked in unison with the village, her movements rhythmic and precise. She managed her hydration with large gulps of water mixed with vinegar, an acidic drink that helped endure the oppressive heat. She prayed for clear skies. Unexpected rain could ruin the grain and condemn everyone to misery. The milling process was the next bottleneck. Mab was required by law to use Geoffrey's mill and pay a portion of her grain for the privilege. She managed the mill-power relation, watching with keen eyes as the miller separated the Lord's portion. She knew every handful of flour lost to Geoffrey was one fewer meal for her children. Mab watched with a heavy heart as wagons loaded with grain headed for the manor's barns. She received her small share, the dark flour full of bran that Geoffrey considered unfit for nobles. She managed coarse flour dignity, knowing that powder was more honest than the refined white wheat Geoffrey consumed with arrogance. Managing winter stock involved a frantic cleaning of storage chests. While Geoffrey planned autumn hunts, Mab dried herbs and salted the rare meats she had managed to obtain. She moved like a persistent shadow, ensuring nothing was wasted, transforming even cabbage stalks into something edible for the cold days. Faced with the prospect of a lifetime of manual labor and the constant threat of crop pests, would you have the iron will needed to keep your head high while delivering most of what you produce to a man who never held a sickle? Mab managed her own revolt, channeling it into the fierce protection of her family and her garden. Managing village health depended on Mab's ability to transform simple foods into medicine. Geoffrey dictated orders and received doctors instructed in Galen. Mab used willow infusions for pain and onion poultices for coughs. She was the earth's healer, building a pharmacopoeia based on what could be gathered and eaten. Mab paused a moment by the hearth, holding a wooden spoon. She managed kitchen geography, ensuring every ingredient was used in its totality. She realized her life was written in vegetable skins and flour dust. She was part of the landscape, as essential as the river or the hills. She existed on the margins of official history. Night was spent in a state of deep, silent exhaustion. Mab helped neighbors process flax, a task that never ended. They worked under tallow candlelight, the smell of animal fat filling the small room. The manor was immersed in silence and beeswax light. The spirit of the village was forged in this collective and continuous effort. They sat together for one final moment before the fire was extinguished. Class distinction was absolute, but exhaustion was a universal leveler in the shadows. Geoffrey looked at the village from his window and felt a distant satisfaction. He was the master of a world he barely knew. Mab and her peers were the invisible engines of his glory and wealth. The workday was exhausting, but Mab already thought of the next challenge. She managed scarcity psychology, ensuring hope did not die with the sunset. She brought the last bucket of water, her movements slow but steady. The ritual was complete. The earth had given its fruit, and Mab had ensured her family had enough to breathe. The final hours of a harvest day in 1348 were as silent as the dust settling in the mill. The noise of workers had departed from the fields, and the village hum had ceased. Geoffrey watched from the manor as the last torchlight in the village was extinguished. He felt a profound pride in his domain. He managed his fief successfully. Mab took dirty work clothes to the wash tub, her muscles screaming with fatigue. She managed end physicality, her footsteps echoing on the stone floor. She felt a mix of relief and dread. The weight of harvest was lifted, but winter was at the door. She was the manager of a cycle that never stopped, a gear in the futile wheel of time. Managing food memory was Mab's final task. She mentally noted the chest levels, calculating every bowl of pottage for the coming months. She did not mention back pains or bloody hands. She was the historian of her own survival, ensuring the knowledge of how to stretch food was passed to her daughters. Mab stood at the hut door, watching moonlight hit the seigneurial barn. She had a handful of grain in her pocket, a small security against the dark. She managed tomorrow's logic, deciding to wake even earlier to grind barley. She knew the road was hard, but her spirit was as strong as her cottage walls. The brutal fate of the peasant was often a slow descent into invisibility if they lost physical strength or land access. Without the protection of a system they themselves fed, Mab would have no future. She was forced to live under constant judgment from those who never felt hunger. She was a force of nature contained in a wool dress. We look back at 1348 and see the manor stones, but we must also see the resilience of those producing bread. Geoffrey and Mab managed a world of absolute social expectations with a dignity that was often invisible. They were the architects of a violent order, their lives a testament to the human soul's resistance through nutrition. The cycle of the garden and cauldron is eternal in the land's memory. Stones remain, but people vanish like smoke from chimneys. Managing the fragile soul of the village is a lifelong vigil connecting us to the past. We hear the echoes of Mab's steps and the clinking of Geoffrey's silver in history's silence. They are ghosts of a daily struggle. History closes the book on Oakhaven, but the stomach noise remains. Managing the medieval stove is a story of grit and survival that will never cease being told. We honor the garden work and Mab's resistance. They were sentinels of an age of iron, lives that were bridges between the dream of abundance and the cold reality of hunger. The earth song is carried by the cold autumn wind. The seasonal transition is complete. We leave the fields of 1348 with a feeling of deep respect. The village ghosts showed us the way. History's sentinel manages the night's last flame. The village heart beats in the world's memory forever, engraved in every wheat grain. The eternal manager finally found her rest in the silence of the rural night. The earth breathes their names in the scent of hay and cold rain. They are gone, but their work will never be forgotten by the soil that sustained them. Their legacy lives in flower dust and pottage steam, an eternal resistance ensuring human continuity through pain. At the first sign of dawn on the horizon, the cycle restarts. Mab is already moving, a persistent shadow against the hut walls. She carries the first bundle of wood, instinctive and sure movements. The kitchen is her world, and she is its silent heart. She does not ask for thanks, only for strength to continue moving toward the next meal. Geoffrey awakes in his warm bed, oblivious to village activity below. He thinks of banquets he must command and lands he must manage. The table is his stage, and he plays his part with perfection. The two, though separated by class chasms, are joined by the land's rhythm. It is a 1,000-year dance that shaped the civilization we live in today. In the end, the medieval village is more than wood and straw. It is a living entity, fed by the sweat of many and the pride of few. Mab and Geoffrey are both parts of its collective soul. Their story is the story of an era, a delicate balance between hunger and banquet. The land remains as a silent witness to human resilience.